Hey, everybody. We are talking with some friends of ours that we met
last October,
and they have a really cool story. They paid off $52,000 in not 7 years, but 7 months. And so we're going to talk to them about that and how they did it, kind of pick their brain and see what we can learn from them. And so they're our special guests today. So it's Chris and Andrea. And so we're going to bring them on. Chris actually runs an awesome podcast called the Money Peach Podcast, which he also has a blog named Money Peach. And definitely check both of those out. He's super sharp, and we'll get into more of that in a second. But anyway, Chris and Andrea, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Looking forward to chatting about all this.
Well, yes, thank you for having us. We're excited to be here.
I'm excited to be here. I will say this just so everybody understands here. Happy wife, happy life. So I do a very good job of making sure I don't step on her toes when she's talking. And we'll talk a little bit of our story. She used to talk for a living. And so
was that why you paused so long so I could start talking first?
If it's my podcast and I'm hosting the show, then I'm in charge.
He plows forward.
But right now, I'm going to just look for little areas where I could just, jab in there.
Well,
so.
You're too close to me, and so I couldn't catch your eye. Like, are you going to?
That is awesome.
You're going to get one of these. Like, hey, my turn. So, yeah.
That's great. I love that. So you both had great incomes in your early 20s. You racked up a bunch of debt. So and I remember reading your story. And so I want you to share kind of your, I don't know, that turning point moment
we
for
call
you
it
guys.
Our aha moment.
Yeah.
I would say. So it was February 2011. And now fast forward, we got married in 2008, 2011. We've been married 3 years. We have a 10-month-old at home. And so she's been on television now probably 7 years, right? So yeah, about 7 years. So everywhere she goes in the Valley, she's recognized, as the girl on TV. And so I was at the fire station and she was at the grocery store. And leading up to this point, we were basically just spending out of control. I think we realized it, but we just felt like, we'll just get a raise. We'll make more money, or we'll figure it out later.
Or every 2 weeks we get paid, and it's all going to be okay.
We just always kind of have this in the back of our mind that if we don't look at it, it will get better. And so we did this over and over and over again. And it was February 2011 at the grocery store. I'll let you take this part here because you were there.
We had a baby, our first baby, and he wasn't even a year old. And I'm there at the grocery store, and I can't have a bad day at the grocery store because I have to always be nice to people. I don't need, like, the one day I decided to have a bad day and take it out on somebody, someone say, that lady on TV, she's just awful. And so, of course, people were so kind and nice, and they would talk and ask all about, the show, and I watch you. And at the time, my co-anchor Rick. And so I'm paying. The groceries are all, loaded up into the bags, and they're in the cart with Carter, our baby. And she asks, swipe your card. I put it in, I swipe it, and it's declined. And I'm like, well, that's weird. And so, of course, like, immediately too, I think, it's in my wallet. The magnetic strip is worn away, and that's probably it. So let me do it again, and declined again. So now I'm starting to get a little bit frantic inside and a little embarrassed, and it didn't work a third time. So I was like, I'll just try a credit card. And I used that, and that didn't work. So we're now on 4 times, and now I'm just like dying inside, but I'm trying to be super positive. And, of course they're not thinking the girl has no money. They're thinking it's like some sort of tech problem.
No, I think they realized.
Well, I'm hoping they think that about me.
I think they realized the girl on TV was broke. Is what I was
embarrassed. And so I said, you know what? I have cash at home. Can I just leave the groceries right here, and I'll run home and get the cash and come back? And they're like, of course. So I grab Carter out of the cart, and I bolt to the car, and I am so mad. I'm livid.
Oh man.
Pissed. And I don't have cash at home. Like, I just am going to leave all those groceries. And I hope there's a shift change, and Susie that was helping me out is not going to, share that with Heather that comes on shift, and we are not going to be embarrassed up here in, North Peoria, Arizona. So he's on shift, and he gets a hot and bothered call from me, and not the hot and bothered that he wishes he was getting. Right?
She was one upset.
I was mad.
Andrea.
I was like, why would you let this happen? There, of course, you. That's all I said. I was so mad at him. I was.
Yeah. And I was like, don't worry about it. We're going to be fine. You know, like, I'll figure this out because that's what, we'll be fine.
That was always it. We're going to be fine.
The next day I came home and it was a Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And I knew we got paid on Friday. And so we look at everything, we print off our bank statements. And that's when we finally looked at it and we realized that we had been living paycheck to paycheck for so long that we had no savings. We had nothing put away for anything. We had $52,000 in consumer debt. We had overdrafted our bank accounts. We were maxed out on our credit card. And I remember sitting there, and that's when I personally felt this overwhelming shame, because for me, I'm supposed to be the leader or the man of the house. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at my 10-month-old in the high chair, realizing if he needs food, I have to go call my mom and dad. And then we started thinking, like, what are our mom and dad going to think of us? What are our friends going to think of us? Our neighbors? They've seen us live this lifestyle with the new cars, new house, vacations, fancy clothes. We've done all these different things for, since day one. We put on this fake show, and now it was all going to come crashing down, and everybody's going to see, like, what was really going on, right? That whole saying is, no one knows you're skinny dipping until the tide comes out.
Yeah.
So I'm like, here we go. Everybody's going to see this. And I just remember it was shame for her. She was angry, but for me, it was just total shame and embarrassment. Because as the man of the house, Bob, you don't want to call your parents for money, right? You don't want to. No. You don't want to have to ever go through that humiliation. And that's what we were facing. I was like, thank God we get paid on Friday. What if this was another week and a half? We can't get gas. We can't get groceries. We can't do anything. And I remember, like, we sat there, and it didn't happen right away, but I remember thinking to myself, this will never happen again. Mm-hmm. Never again are we going to make this much money and sit here and feel this broke. We're not feel this broke. We were that broke.
Yeah. But feel these feelings
never again. And I remember hearing, I started tuning into everything I could finance. And I remember hearing this quote that the number 2 cause of divorce in North America was money problems and money fights. Number 1 is infidelity, if you're wondering. And number 2 is money problems and money fights. And I remember thinking, we're going to be statistics if we don't get this figured out, because I know this, like, it was bad. It was bad.
And the thing is we didn't necessarily fight leading up to that about money. We just never talked about it.
Yeah.
And when I look back, I'm like, almost fighting would have actually been better, because it was some sort of communication, maybe not the healthiest communication, but no communication about something as important as that was really to the detriment of that portion of our life, which money is everything. I mean, it touches every aspect of your life, whether you want to believe that or not. And it was affecting every part of our life and now our marriage.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm curious, where was God in all this, in this whole equation for you guys?
God was coming
a couple years later.
I mean, God was there.
I mean, we were
believers, but we did not turn to God, and we did not let him guide our life. We tried to control it.
I would say it was a couple years later when we basically just opened our hands and we were like, all right, your turn.
Yeah, your way's got to be better.
When we do it our way, we have some success, but it's never going to be at the level that God can create. And it just, we're not very smart over here. Okay. We had to go deep into debt, and then we had to, make a bunch of mistakes. Finally, we were like, all right, God, we'll just do what you want to do. I promise you your plan's going to be better than mine.
Yeah.
It's always the best course of action, right?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. So I want to dig into the paying off the $52,000 in 7 months. Like that's
crazy.
Unbelievable. Like talk through a little bit of what that looks like
during that time. And now looking back, I've thought about this too.
Yeah. So when you go back and retrace his faithfulness, even though we didn't give all the glory to him at the time because he wasn't front and center, now we look back and it's like it was all him. Like hands down.
So what it looked like was February we go broke, right? Well, we didn't start doing anything until April because we didn't know what the heck to do. So for 2 months, we basically just pointed fingers at each other and said, no, it's your fault, your problem.
Or just not talk about it.
And not talk about it for 2 months. We just kind of were in this idle state because we didn't know what to do. And I remember I came home and I said, I think that we need to live on a budget. And you looked at me and you were like, you can.
Yeah, I was so
no, it's going to be fun. And so the first step, we basically came to the decision that like,
well, when
if we
I
don't
heard,
make changes,
yeah.
we're not going to ever, we're never going to find success.
But but you just have to give just a tiny little background. Is when you said that and I wasn't willing, it's because I wasn't listening. I heard budget, and what that felt like and what I heard from that was you are going to live well below your means, the means that I'm going to say you have to live within. You can't go to Target anymore.
Yeah, I did say that.
Yeah, like that's what and I'm like, well, take me now. My whole life's over if I can't go to Target. Like, no. And so it took me about a week for me to really for me to come back to you and say, all right, what will this budget look like? Like, how strict are we going to have to get?
So in April, we decided to get on a plan, and we didn't know what a budget was. And I have screenshots that I've shared with students in our class of our first budget. And it was terrible. I mean, it was on a white piece of paper, and it looked ugly. It was like $900 over that month, and we were trying. But once we got on a budget, we realized that the pain of remaining in debt any longer was more than the pain of living on a budget and sacrificing. And so, like that teeter-totter effect, it finally became, okay, the pain of being broke sucks, and it's now more painful than anything else. So we need to. Now was time. So I remember we got on a budget, and it was once we got on a budget, we started seeing how much money we were spending frivolously. And it became this game where it was like, okay, we could always go back and get that stuff, right? But what if we just turned everything off? What if we turned off cable? What if we turned off, what
if we sold that car and got something, a cash car that was much cheaper, not as nice, not as new, but something reliable.
And of course, we're normal. We were upside down in our cars. So it was weird to sell a car and still make payments on it. But I remember telling her, we owe $36,000 on this car, or $34,000 it was. So we can get 30 for it. So I think it would be a lot easier to pay off 6 than it would be to pay off 30 or 36, And so we just kind of made these decisions. And so we got crazy. So she wasn't allowed to work overtime because she was a salaried employee. So she started selling everything. You sold pictures off the wall. You sold sunglasses, purses, shoes. And the thing is since she spent so much freaking money on clothes, these clothes still sold for pretty good money. I mean, it was actually a pretty good little side hustle.
I'd meet people too, because that was when Facebook.
There was no Facebook Marketplace.
No, there was no Facebook Marketplace, but there were those swap groups on Facebook. I don't know if there's still a thing here.
Yeah.
So like basically online garage sales, and I would meet people at the grocery store parking lot, and
I was always like,
I'm exchanging shoes. This feels wrong, but it's not drugs. It's not illegal. I'm just selling her shoes. Like, it's fine.
So then for me, the blessing came in 3 ways for me personally, how I can contribute. So number one, the fire department hadn't hired in a while because of, the economy was just, the government is always a couple years behind the economy shift. So we didn't hire, and we had retired people. So there was this shortage in workforce. So it was nonstop overtime. If I wanted to work every day, I could. So I was working as much as I possibly could overtime. And so then when I was in college, one of my jobs was I had a pool route. I would go, clean pools. So I remember I told you, it was like, I think May or June, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to Google Earth. Because this is remember, this is 2011. So I went to Google Earth. I printed off a map of our neighborhood, and I highlighted all the houses that had pools. And so we put our 10-month-old in the car. She drove me door to door, and I'm like, stop. And I would get out, and I had like a 1 minute.
An elevator speech.
Yeah, 1 minute sales pitch. And I would, say, hey, my name's Chris. I live in the neighborhood. I noticed you have a pool. I don't know if you have a pool technician, but I'm a qualified pool technician, and I would like to clean your pool. If you're wondering why, I'm actually a firefighter here in Arizona, and I'm trying to earn extra money to pay off my debt, and I'd love to be in your neighborhood. If you need me day or night, you can call me. And I don't know, 1 out of 5, let's get started. Yeah. So that brought in, there was 1 month I brought, I think, almost $2,000 a month in there. Overtime, we sold everything, okay? And then I was also playing football at the time, and I played in a tackle football league for public safety. And so...
Because he still felt like he was 18.
This is another God thing. God gave me the pool route, right? God gave me the ability to work nonstop overtime. And then God put me on the field at a certain moment where I broke my leg. So the pool route day was over, but here's was the icing on the cake. I was so done with money that I had forgot that I had signed up for an Aflac injury insurance policy. And so I think they paid us like 10 grand.
Something.
And we just all at debt. So...
But he got a broken leg out of it, and God humbled him and was like, I think those days are over. Now go pay your debt off and start stewarding it a little bit better.
Imagine having at the time, a 1-year-old a 2-story house, a broken leg.
A full-time working wife that left at 3:30 in the morning.
You know, saying, we can get through that, we can get through anything.
Yes.
Well, you're a firefighter too. It's like you need to be rescuing people.
Yeah.
You're just in there.
The fire department wasn't too thrilled with me breaking my leg
No.
playing football either. But
Yeah, no.
I guess not.
it was better than working overtime. I know it wasn't actually. I'd rather work overtime. Breaking a leg. So I remember we worked the plan, and every month it seemed like, how much more can we squeeze? What else can we do? And
It was momentum.
It started getting more crazy,
We were getting excited because we were seeing a small win after another.
Yeah.
And when you get that wheel going, it's
and
like,
we had a great income.
stop.
We just reallocated our income to debt. I mean, it wasn't like we still were making the same amount of money. And then I remember it was November 17th, 2011, and we were sitting, I think, in this office right here. And I said, Andrea, come here. And I look online, and we had more money in our checking account than our last debt. So I knew on paper we were debt free, but we still had that debt. So I was getting ready to pay it, and she was like, "We need to." It was. I don't want to say the bank.
Yeah,
but we went to Bank of America, and so we drove into Bank of America, and I'll never forget. Like, it's just a couple miles down the road. We drove up to Bank of America. We walk in, and I'm like, I mean, you got to remember, if you go this radical, just imagine what your friends think of you when you're selling your cars, you're buying beater cars, you're not going out to eat, you stop drinking coffee out with friends, you don't go to bars, you don't do anything.
You say no to a lot of things.
Everything, right? No gifts, nothing. Like, we were just no. People thought we were crazy. And I remember we were walking into the Bank of America, and I remember thinking to myself, like, we're going to show them. They thought we were crazy, and maybe we were crazy, but we did it. We did what everybody thought we couldn't do.
And that fueled
it felt so good.
And it fueled it a little bit.
We walk into Bank of America, and I'll never forget, I wrote the check out, handed it to the teller, and then she tears off that slip, and it tells you your account balance. And it said $0, 0 cents paid in full. And that moment was, I always say, like, in life, getting married to her was the best decision I made. The 2 kids, depending on the month, which kid we like the most, but that was right behind it. And I remember thinking to myself, Andrea, we have to tell every single person we know how to do this, because this just saved us. This changed our lives. This is be married forever. This is going to allow us peace. When we go to bed at night, our head hits the pillow, and we go to sleep, we don't stress. All of these things, it felt like somebody had asked me, what does it feel like? I said, imagine you're walking around with a backpack full of 100 pounds, and you've been doing this for 10 years, and that's all you know. And all of a sudden, somebody just reaches over and grabs it off your back, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's what that feels like. And so since that moment, I think we have, like, that's why we're here right now. I mean, we have nonstop made it our mission that we are going to tell everybody we know.
And, I think as you make commitments and you stay consistent with habits, and that's living this way is a lifestyle now. It's a habit that's so deep ingrained in us. And it's one of those things that is a non-negotiable. So we never, ever, ever miss a month. And of doing a budget, of sitting down, and they don't take nearly as long now. We've been doing them over and over and over, and not a lot changes every month. But the consistency of that, plus it's the connection too of, like, where are we on our mindset, our goal set? Like, are we still steadfast to this? Is this the next thing? And it keeps that communication line really, really open. And money just is not, it's a topic of conversation that's really easy, and it's not taboo for us. It's not, it doesn't need to be, in our opinion. It just does not need to be. And so there's a lot of things, I think, when you get, you just get going so hardcore on a goal. And I always say it's like, you start out on a diet, right? And eventually you have to find that middle gear, because for it to become a lifestyle, it's got to be something sustainable, or something that can be consistently done over and over. As far as our budget in this lifestyle, like, that is one thing we just can't let go of. And so we sometimes go into that sort of middle gear, because, as you start, when you're out of debt and you're just investing and things like that, you don't have those rapid wins all the time. It feels long. But we know, like, we can't let off the gas, because this is one of those things that we can't stay too far in middle gear, or we will just let off the gas too much, and then I don't think it will stay consistent.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. I mean, I think we very much felt exactly the same way as we paid off our debts.
Yeah.
Right. Don't you think?
Definitely.
Like, just that, I mean, what you're talking about, that 100-pound backpack, it's like, that's exactly how it feels. That's a great descriptor. And
I felt like it was something on my chest. Like, it was like somebody sitting on my chest, and just like, it's hard to breathe,
Yeah. And so an interesting thing, we paid off our mortgage and then we moved to Tennessee, and real estate's a lot more expensive here. And so we were having a really good year with the business. I was like, well, let's get a little mortgage, everything will be going great and we'll get it paid off within a year or something. No big deal. So we got that mortgage. Business did not continue going as well. We started trickling down, ended up having that mortgage for another, I don't know, 2 or 3 years or something. Yeah. And man, it was so much worse. So much worse. I was like, I'm so
mad at myself. Why did we get back into debt? This is the stupidest thing I've ever done.
Like it's yeah. So having tasted the freedom and been completely out of debt and then going back in, like it was even worse.
Yeah.
So anyway, and like I want to touch on something that you guys were talking about, or I think Chris, you were mostly talking about this, but I think you both were doing this. One thing that I've observed is for a lot of people, I don't know. I feel like most people who accomplish really great financial goals like this, like paying off this much debt in this short a period of time, it is a hobby for them. So it replaces X hobby over here. And this becomes not just the thing that you have to do, but the thing that you get excited about, the thing that you nerd out on, the thing that really is an obsession of your time. I mean, in a good way. And that's what it seemed like for you guys. I mean, is that accurate to describe it that way?
And I think that's what happened is after we paid off our debt, the nonstop, we didn't kind of know how to slow down at first. I remember we were like, we just did something great. We need to take a break. But we didn't know how. And I think what happened is like we just transferred this energy. And this is 2011. Money Peach started in 2015. So there was a 3.5-year period in there where we weren't thinking we got to start a business. We were just thinking, how can we tell people about this?
We would, have 6 p.m. dinners at our kitchen table, and a couple would come over and we would share a meal and we would simply show them how to set up a budget. And
then it turned into, well, can you show my friend? He's struggling. He's going through divorce. Can you show my brother? And then it became, I was showing more and more people. And then we go to CrossFit, and the owners of our CrossFit gym at the time, we helped them with their budget. And they go, we want to offer this to our members. Will you teach classes out of our gym on Sunday nights?
Wow.
Yes. And it just became like this addiction hobby that all we wanted to do was like talk about money. And we wanted to do, we chose to do it in a better setting because it turned into like, oh, here come Chris and Andrea again. They're going to talk to us about freaking a budget. No one wanted to hang out with us. We were the budget couple. But then when you are hosting a class and you're inviting people, come to the class where we're going to talk about getting out of debt and saving money, then it was like the freedom to do that. And that's when I realized like, we've got to do this in a different way. And so we did that for 3 years. And then, long story short, but somebody in our class said, hey, you should start a blog. And I was like, oh,
what's a blog?
Isn't that where women share their recipes? I didn't know. I didn't know what a blog was. I'm like, I remember people talking about recipes, and they're like, no. And then so somebody knew a mutual friend of ours, this guy named Deacon Hayes, and he had a blog for at the time about 5 years. And so I remember I went to coffee, and I told Andrea, I'm like, I'm going to go to coffee with this guy named Deacon. We're going to talk about blogging. She was like, what are you doing? And I go there, and I came back, and I'm all excited. I'm like, I can talk about debt and budgets and saving as much as I want. And I can just put it out on the internet, and it doesn't really cost any money. I could do this nonstop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the start of it.
Yeah, that was the start.
Wow.
Yeah, it's funny how, it's addicting. It's funny, like also I had that same conversation, but in 2007. But yeah, and most people didn't know what a blog was then, but that's crazy.
Okay, I have a question for you guys. So you talked about just kind of the shame aspect. Chris, you touched on this about just feeling really ashamed. And then you talked about how you talk about money now, which is without any shame. I wonder, like, is this conversation going on with your kids? Like, do they hear you talking about this stuff, and how are you talking to them about it? Because I feel like people feel so ashamed about money, and it's all because there's a lack of education. And how should we be talking about it so that we don't feel that? Because that is not from God. Like, that shame is not from God. And so I feel like, I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
I'm extremely passionate about this. And I would say that, societal standards are that children are kept in the dark about mom and dad's finances, sometimes forever. I mean, there's adults out there that have no idea what's going on with their parents. And more is caught than taught, right? We could sit there and we could teach things all day long, but I look back to moments, and I would challenge any parent to do this. Look back to a moment that was impactful with like a conversation with your mom and dad or something like that. And I'll never forget, I look back to, I was probably, I don't know, a teenager in high school. And I remember my dad came home, and everybody can relate to this. Chris, turn off the lights. You leave the lights on all the time and it costs money, you know? Well, if you would have left it there, I probably would have kept the lights on. And I'll never forget, I was working my first job, I think at Jamba Juice. Okay. Do you guys have that in Tennessee?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was making smoothies, people. I was doing it. I was making smoothies. All right. And so I remember my dad was paying bills, because this is, you know, in the mid 90s, you sent checks in the mail. And he's like, Chris, come here and take a look at this. And he showed me the electric bill. And it was like $240 in 1995. And I remember thinking, so 200, I don't even make that in a month slinging smoothies at Jamba Juice. And that right there caused me to go turn lights off. He didn't have to tell me anymore. That impacted me. So I think, okay, I look back at that and I go, okay, how can I now impact the kids the same way? We have a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old. So the 10-year-old's working really well, but like, I show him everything. He knows.
We're very transparent.
He knows how much mom and dad make each month. He knows how much our bills are. He knows what the mortgage is. He knows what our utilities are. He knows everything. And, you know, the fear that people have is, oh, this is private. Well, he doesn't like, I just tell him, son, don't go out and advertise this to the world, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And if he does, that's a small price to pay to have a little, whatever, open book if he learns about money.
Well,
Yeah.
I am already seeing happening with a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old is this idea of keeping up with the Joneses, and this comparison trap that is already so prevalent in a young child's life. And so for us, you know, we have these conversations all the time. And one time, this was just last year, and when you talked about how, you know, you took the mortgage out, the business was doing great, you're like, oh, it'll be fine, we'll have it paid off. Well, that was us, and that was about a year and a half ago. And we had made some investments that we had like plans to do really well with, plus his business. And then, you know, there was a shift in all of that. And so we had these plans for these 2 big vacations to take the kids on.
Yeah.
Well, that now doesn't align with the priority of how we live. We will never go into debt to take our kids on a vacation. We will never shelter them from the word no. We can't do that just to keep them comfortable and keep them sheltered from the reality of how life truly is. And of course, we want them to have experiences, but I never want them to think that those experiences just happen no matter what is going on financially. And so we had to have this conversation last year with them, and we're like, you know, I think we were more worried too, because we're like, they're just going to be just in tears. And we said, guys, that cruise that mommy and daddy planned to take you guys on for spring break. Well, you know, you know how we are with money, and we have to make sure that, you know, God gets, you know, his money, and we have to make sure we do it right, and we have to save for you guys, and all of these things. We have to pay the bills, the lights that are on at the house. And I said, and some of the things with mommy and daddy's work didn't go as planned. And so we have to take from something that, you know, is a want. And we really want to go on vacation, but this year we're probably gonna have to do something small. Maybe we'll just go up north for, you know, here in town instead. And they were like, okay,
okay, sounds good.
that's fine. So like, we can go stay in a little cabin up north. And we're like, yeah, I mean, they were totally, and I think it's because over the last several years, they're being groomed to understand that, you know, this is how we will always, steward this money. Like, we will never say yes to things just because your friends have it. I mean, we had the conversation not that long ago. He had a friend over, and his Carter, our son, his friend's like, why do you guys not have brand new cars? And we both looked at each other.
And we didn't say anything. Carter goes, well, my mom and dad are real serious about their money. And, you know, they just want to make sure that, you know, all the important things are paid. And if we have money left over for a new car, maybe they buy one. But my dad, he likes to make sure he gets a good deal. I'm like, look at her, I'm like, we're doing it right.
Love it.
And it's not always like that. So I don't want to paint the picture like our kids are.
Just the other day. So we live in an area where we have some friends that are very, very high income earners. And so one of our friends got an amazing, amazing truck. And so, you know, he was over, and I was like, dude, I'm gonna go see your truck. We were looking at it, and I mean, it's nice. It is
all the bells and whistles,
everything, right? And Carter's out of the truck, and he looks at the time we just sold it. We had a 2011 Kia. Oh yeah, and he looks at the truck, and he goes, Dad, our car kind of sucks, huh? And I go, yeah, it does kind of suck compared to this truck, but if we compare it to something else, it's awesome. I said, compared to your bike, it is awesome. He's like, no, that's true, Dad. It's really good compared to my bike. I'm like, the comparison here. Yeah.
That's so smart. I love that.
That's awesome.
All right. Yeah, this is so good. All right. Here's how I want you to end this. I want to hear, from people watching, people listening who are like, man, that's awesome. That's good for them. Bob and Linda got out of debt. Chris and Andrea got out of debt. I don't know if it's worth it. I don't know if it's worth the fight. I don't know if it's worth the struggle. Like, what would you say to that?
I get asked this all the time. Is it worth it? So here's what I will say is, if you continually every single month live in debt, that means your debt's going to go up over time. And there's going to be a time, whether you like it or not, where you're going to hit the wall. We hit ours in February 2011. So maybe your wall is next year, maybe it's in 5 years, maybe it's in 10 years. But the point is, it's coming. It's definitely coming. There's no way to continue to live in debt and not hit destruction. And biblically speaking, we all know that God doesn't want us in debt. God doesn't want, the borrower truly is slave to the lender. And so if you believe that, if you believe debt is bad, if you are in debt and you don't like it, which I've never met anybody that's like, yeah, I'm in debt. It's pretty cool. I've never heard anybody say that. I promise you, if you don't make a change, it only gets intensified. It only gets worse. And so you get to make the decision. The decision it's not, is it worth it or not? Do you want to live the life that you plan on living, the dream that you have for your life in the future? If you want to do that, no one dreams about, I can't wait to retire, be completely broke and cash it all in, right? No one dreams that. If you have a dream one day to be able to, take your grandkids out, or be able to give, or to be able to do, start a foundation, or do whatever you want, everything in life that we do is attached to money. Sorry, I didn't make the rules, but that's the way it is. There's nothing out there that's not attached to money. I challenge anybody on that. I've been doing this long enough where I've tried to come up with something. It's all touching money. So then just take that and say, okay, if everything in my life touches money, and money is stressful, and everything in my life touches money, then there's going to be stress in my life. There's going to be fear. There's going to be that ongoing worry of, are we going to have enough? But if you can relieve that stress and get out of debt and stay out of debt, then wouldn't it make sense that everything in your life that it touches money, if money's the good part of life, then it just elevates your life? I promise you, it's 1 + 1 = 2. It's not rocket science. So just keep that in mind. Is it worth it? I think the question isn't, is it worth it? Is, where do you want to be in life?
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah, it's completely worth it. And it is, we say this all the time, like it's not easy in the fact of it being, having to stay consistent and continuing to build that habit upon habit upon habit of really sticking to what that original goal and that dream of your life was. Is it easy? Math aside, yes. Like you said, it's a numbers thing. Once you get that all figured out, I would say that the numbers part is the easy part.
It's fifth grade math.
It is staying consistent and persistent. And we want to be so persistent with this because we know how radically it's changed our life living this way and honoring God in our finances. And it changed every scope of our life, from the way we parent to the way we show up for friends and family and the way we show up for, our community. And I feel super called to continue to always walk forward with that sort of, mission.
That's great.
That's great. Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you taking the time and chatting about all this. Yeah. Oh, one last thing. So, moneypeach.com, Money Peach Podcast. Anywhere else people can find you?
So you can find me Money Peach, like you just said, and then Andrea has her site. I would say if you're a female watching or listening, you're definitely going to be more tailored to her. But she has a weekly encouragement, funny, faith-based newsletter that goes out every Friday, right? And it's pretty amazing how fast this thing's grown. I mean,
that's awesome.
I would say, out there's so many people another newsletter, but her newsletters actually get shared. People share her newsletter with their friends. And I'm like, wow, you're doing something crazy, because no one shares money-related newsletters. They're like, oh, but
I didn't realize that you had a newsletter.
I didn't either.
But I follow you on Instagram. What is your handle there? Because
just Andrea Robinson TV.
Because she's, first of all, hilarious, and second of all, so encouraging, and not What did you do? The other day you were talking about, let's just go on vacation for a few minutes and not decide.
Oh, yeah. I was
not have to think about our kids going back to school.
I was like, I don't want to think about that. Let's just pretend like we have a drink in our hand and our toes are in the sand. Playing. Okay, just stay with him for a minute.
So,
That's
yes.
awesome.
So definitely check her out.
All right. Well, appreciate you guys. We'll see you soon.
All right, take care.
Bye, guys.
Hey, thanks so much for watching the video. If you haven't yet taken our money mastery quiz, be sure to do that.
Yeah, it's just a super quick 2-minute quiz, and it's going to help you understand how good you are with your money.
Yeah, and it's going to provide a custom report giving you specific suggestions on how you can reach your financial goals up to 10 times faster. Head over to seedtime.com/quiz to get started now.